Hey everybody, I just wanted to make a quick video here. I had a lot of people ask me questions about training the youth, especially in this quarantine situation where a lot of kids are going to be uh, at home and not able to go to school or just very limitedly, and it's going to be putting the physical education on the parents. So a couple people had asked me for some advice, and I thought that I would go ahead and make a video here and dispel some of the myths. So when dealing with children, it's really important to go over the risk and the benefits of training. So I wanted to go over pretty in-depthly some of the data out there, some research papers. So it might be kind of boring, but it's important stuff. And if you're going to train your child, you should be well informed when it comes to this topic. So I'm going to just jump right into it. And at the end, I'll present some strategies, and I can make additional videos if upon request. So I've researched a bunch of different places. I've been researching this for a number of years. And there's two articles from this National Center for Biotechnology Information that I thought were pretty straightforward. They weren't too lengthy, but they go over all of the issues in detail, but in brevity too. So I'm going to basically read through it, and I'm going to try to walk through the different jargon, because I know it can be kind of confusing, and we'll talk about what it means here. So this first article here, it's called Safe Exercise Prescription for Children and Adolescents. So it just means how you can train young adults and children. So I'm going to basically just read it right through here. This article provides practical advice on healthy exercise prescription for children. There is growing scientific evidence about the abilities and limits of child athletes in both recreational and competitive environments. As exercise becomes essential for the prevention of illness and maintenance of health, counseling for an exercise prescription requires enhanced knowledge. The latest recommendations on safe strength, resistance, and weight training are presented in a concise format for office use. Okay, we're just going to skip that. And it says here, our youth need to develop good physical activity and sports habits so that they will be lifelong exercisers. So this is really important, that the habits that you form in childhood, they're going to stick with you. I know a lot of people have kind of the same mannerisms as their parents, and you know, the habits you get from your family are much more influential than your genetics even, I would argue. But that's just a wholly separate tangent. But it's really important to create a pattern of behavior when you're younger, so that way down the road it might not be as difficult to create a habit. Okay, so we're going to skip down again here. Sports medicine encompasses the prevention of injury, the diagnosis and rehabilitation of injury, and the continued training to maintain high performance levels. Many professional disciplines are involved in sports medicine, including primary care physicians, orthopedic surgeons, physiotherapists, athletic therapists, nutritionists, psychologists, and kinesiologists. Of equal importance are the coach, teacher, and parent, the key individuals who encourage, support, and monitor whether the goals of the student are being met through the sport of choice. It does not matter whether the sport is recreational or competitive, the adolescent participant needs positive reinforcement in his or her participation. So that means that it's not all on these professionals out there. What's going to really matter in a child's upbringing are the parents and also coaches and other family members that the child's going to be in closer proximity and longer duration than, you know, a doctor or somebody like that. Children have always been perceived to be energetic, fit, and strong because they are young. A healthy child enjoys movement, socializes through sports and activity, and is rewarded by personal accomplishments in self-esteem and skill acquisition. Yet the reality is young people are not adopting healthy lifestyle exercises. So, yeah, obesity is on the rise, including childhood obesity. So I should need to talk about all of that. Children are spending increasingly more time in sedentary activities such as using computers, playing video games, and watching television. The educational system has changed the compulsory requirements for physical education. For example, only one secondary school credit in physical education or health is required in Ontario. The level and availability of extracurricular sports activities vary across the country and often depend on funding or volunteer parent support. Parents' concerns over the neighborhood safety have restricted kids gathering in the local park for an informal game of baseball. This is especially pertinent to the quarantine situation right now. Many children are enrolled in organized recreational and competitive sports through leagues and associations. This involves a commitment of money and time on the part of the parents and may not allow children to experiment comfortably with their bodies and their preferences for types of activities. The instruction and education that parents give their children makes an impact, and children continue to remain active as adults and gain the health benefits associated with exercise. We talked about this already. The Ontario Ministry of Tourism and Recreation conducted a research survey on physical patterns in adult years and found that the 18 to 29-year-old group was more active than the older adults, but not to the degree expected. In the 18 to 29-year-old group, 30% of the participants were inactive, 24 were only exercised once weekly, which is of questionable benefit, and 46% exercised 2 or 4 times weekly. That means that less than half the adolescents who graduate into adulthood actually start with healthy exercise patterns. When tracked over a 4-year period, younger adults only increase their level of physical activity by 4%, while older adults increase by 15%. So it's just basically saying that, you have your freshman 15, people go into college. The skills that they learn in their PE class aren't necessarily being applied after graduating, or if you don't go to school, even then, a lot of people's lifestyle choices don't always involve training as much as they would like to. So again, it's really important to develop these patterns early on. The Ontario Ministry of Health produced a report, Just Ask Us, What We Want to Know About Health, that details the health interests and questions of children from age 8 to 15 years. In the area of fitness and exercise, children wanted to know the following. When do they have to start getting fit? Is getting fit and playing sports the same thing? How long should they exercise every day? Why is exercise good for them? Boys wanted to know how to make themselves stronger. Girls wanted to know how to lose weight through exercise. Taking the lead from these questions, the goals of a safe exercise program are clear. We need to educate our young on the why, how, and what to do. We need to address the myths and concerns of body image, self-esteem, and healthy bodies. Like Aristotle says, the artist knows causes, so it's important to know the reason why behind these things instead of just blindly obeying what the teacher said. It's important to know, okay, there's going to be some application to this, and if it's not applicable, then I know the reason behind it. So that's another tangent, so I'm going to continue on here. Conditioning and exercise. Sports injuries comprise 18 to 39% of school-age children visits to their physician, admissions to the emergency room, as reported on sport-specific surveys. The incidence has increased tenfold over the past 10 years as organized and recreational sport has gained popularity. The majority of injuries are overuse syndromes stemming from training and technique errors in conditioning programs. The occurrence of youth sports injuries has been directly correlated to the quality of adult coaching and supervision. Strength training is a key component of sports conditioning aimed at preventing preventional injuries and increasing skill and ability. Supervised strength training programs have been researched in the pediatric population and have been found to be effective in increasing dynamic strength and safe for growing muscles, bones, and growth plates. Injuries to a skeletally immature athlete are common, but most of the injuries do not have long-term implications. There's no risk-free sport, and children tend to select the sports that they wish to participate in based on their own desire, peer pressure, and their own talent regardless of injury rate. A pre-participation athletic examination is helpful for identifying adolescents at risk for orthopedic injury, and guidelines developed by the American Academy of Pediatrics provide the most current source in which conditions disqualify athletes from specific sports. So, if your child has a heart condition, it's probably not a wise idea to have them start training or getting involved in sports. Most of those sports will have your child get a physical. It's something that you want to look into. This other article is going to touch on that also. Early studies in pre- and post-pubescent children found no significant strength gains after a monitored training program. Numerous studies from 1985 to 1995 have proven that children can increase muscular strength. So it's saying that the old data is kind of irrelevant, outdated. New research proves that children, in fact, do increase their strength at a very rapid pace when compared to other population groups like adults. The physiological mechanism for strengthening may not be muscle hypertrophy as it is in adults. Neural adaptation of motor unit activation and intrinsic muscle function measured in twitch torque appear to produce positive changes in motor skill coordination, resulting in improved strength tests. Neural adaptation occurs when there is an increased ability to activate and coordinate the relevant muscles as opposed to muscular adaptation where there is an increase in muscle size and specific tension. So what that means is that if a child starts training, they're not really going to get they're not going to get big. That word hypertrophy, it just means increase in muscle size. And the neural adaptation, like it said, it's just increasing the amount the motor units are getting activated. So a child is getting stronger because their central nervous system is learning how to activate more of their muscles. So simply put, they're learning how to use their muscles more efficiently. Research performed on children participating in specific sports such as running studied aerobic capacity and found only a 6% improvement in measured ventilatory oxygen uptake after a 12-week supervised program. The expected improvement from a similar program in the adult population is 18% to 20%. So, if a child is training only their aerobically, they're only going to get 1/3 of the results that adult would get training. So it's not going to be as effective. Physiological difference in children such as smaller organs in proportion to body size and less efficient metabolism and heat transfer, may contribute to lower training effects. The physical benefits of exercise include increased bone density, decreased lipid profiles, healthy body composition, improved posture, and reduced injury occurrence. So basically, a child who trains, they're gonna have stronger bones, they're gonna have a lower body fat percentage, and their chances of getting injured are going to be lower for a number of reasons. And yeah, their posture is going to be better too, because if you're lifting or training with good technique, it's going to, again, I don't want to get on too much of a tangent, it's going to help make sure that your fascia and all that stuff is in line. Psychological benefits for children and adolescents include improved self-concept, mental discipline, acquisition of social skills, and improved lifestyle attitudes. There have been many studies whose results display a trend in improved school performance with regular exercise. Yeah, I mean, being a student athlete, I think a lot of people have had experiences in their life where being a student athlete brought a certain amount of structure and purpose to their day-to-day. And it might even been something that kept somebody more involved in school. But, you know, we have people who get too involved in sports also, where they prioritize school, or they prioritize athletics over school. So, you know, that's something you need to talk about with your child. The questions regarding the psychological effects of exercise usually centers around the issue that competitive sport may create unhealthy stress in children. Stress in sport can be divided in the categories of state anxiety, trait anxiety, and burnout. State anxiety refers to a stress reaction that occurs during sport participation. Trait anxiety refers to intrinsic personality characteristics of the child that may be compounded in situational stress. For example, all batters in a baseball game will experience anxiety symptoms such as increased heart rate, perspiration, and twitchiness. These symptoms will subside in the majority of players once batting is finished. Children with trait anxiety have personality characteristics that lend to worry, self-criticism, and anxiety. These children worry about the game the night before, are unable to eat dinner on the day of the game, and still experience increased stress at the time of batting. Their symptoms may not subside after the game is over, and they may have sleep disturbances or withdrawal. So that was trait anxiety. Yeah, I mean, I have trait anxiety. I just call it barbell anxiety. Every time I go and I'm about to have a work set, I have a certain amount of tension, and that's necessary. That can help you perform, but it's a skill managing that stress, and different people have different levels of it depending on personality, like it was stated. Burnout is a reaction of the stresses of training and competition that manifests as emotional exhaustion, withdrawal, and decreased physical performance. This can be a result of imbalance between physical demands and age-appropriate capabilities. Burnout avoidance strategies such as having a recreational sport, taking productive breaks, treating physical injuries early, and keeping winning and losing in perspective can reduce its incidence and severity. So burnout is like a really big concern of myself when it comes to training children, because if you go too hard on them, they're just going to burn out, and everything that you're trying to instill in them and those habits are going to go the other way. It's going to have the complete opposite effect. So it's really important that they have fun, but they learn that the skills that they need to learn, and is a pretty good strategy here. And here's a big one here, is treating physical injuries early and keeping winning and losing in perspective. So I think it's really super important that children learn local stabilization exercises, or I'll just call them colloquially as yoga exercises, and that are really important, especially for people who train. And that's a whole other topic again. And if you want me to make some simple videos, not as lengthy as this, explaining how to do those exercises, please let me know, and I would be more than happy to make a video about that. The Committee on Sports Medicine of the American Academy of Pediatrics wrote a position statement entitled Assessing Physical Activity and Fitness in the Office Setting. This document outlines the relevant assessment techniques that enhance physicians' understanding of their patients' physical activity demands and needs. Some of the recommendations include the following. Assess, using a history, the frequency, type, and duration of physical activities during any health supervision visit for a child 3 years of age and older. Teach the importance of regular, moderate to vigorous physical activity as a way to prevent illness in adult life. Encourage parents to serve as role models by participating in regular physical activity, ideally with their child as a family. Serve as role models by participating in regular physical activity. Work with community schools, supporting daily physical education in these schools, and promoting moderate to vigorous activity tasks in physical education classes. Well, this last one, work with PE classes and programs, is kind of tough in this quarantine situation. So it's going to be even more important to serve as a role model for your children, and ideally, hey, let's do some physical activity together as a family. So I think that would be a really good strategy on teaching your child the importance of a healthy lifestyle. Each child must be evaluated for readiness for competition and coping skills for situational anxiety. This can be done by an experienced coach, insightful parents, a physician, or psychologist. The assessor should be unbiased and interested in the child's welfare, not the secondary gain of winning. More complex cases where high injury rates, growth, or weight alterations, fluctuation in school performance, or emotional instability are seen should be assessed by a physician. Generally, in the early years of childhood, participation should be recreational, with skill acquisition, socialization, and physical development the primary goals. Some children may be ready for intense competition by age 8 or 9 years, while others may not be ready until age 12 or 13. Key questions and considerations of the assessment are listed in tables 1 and 2, which we're going to go over. There is a sequence of escalating skills and demands that should be followed to ensure that a child is ready and prepared for the next level of sport participation. So, just a really basic model here. The kid starts off playing t-ball, and then eventually they might get into the pony league or into high school baseball and compete in the state tournament. So it goes from more recreational to more competitive and specialized training. Key questions to include in the assessment of readiness of children for competitive sport. So, Gonna go over this table here. Questions. Who wants the child to participate in the sport? So there's two answers they give to each of these, the recreational answer and the competitive answer. Parents want child to try. Child wants a trial first time. Okay, so they're just trying it out. That's the recreational answer. The competitive answer is child has been involved in sport and wants to continue. So after they've done t-ball or the league after that, they like it and then they keep going. That's more of the competitive answer. It's also important that they don't get discouraged if they aren't being as successful as they think they should be. Early on, it's important too for parents not to put too much pressure on their kids too, especially in this early training. It should be entirely recreational. They should be having fun. They should just be learning about the discipline of a schedule and working with a team and just the basics of the technique and how to train. Okay, what are the goals for learning the skills of the sport? Here's the recreational answer. Gain basic technical skill. The competitive answer is refine skill, enjoys analysis of performance. So it might not be necessary to start watching tape of your swing until later on. But when you're in the t-ball, gaining some basic technical skill on your foot placement and how to swing the bat. What does the child enjoy socially about the sport? Likes to meet new friends, building social skills. And then the competitive answer would be builds his or her own character, enjoys a few close long-term friends. So yeah, you're going to develop some friends, some possibly lifelong friends from sports, especially the higher level you get in them. How much time does the family have? 1 to 2 times a week to a total of 4 to 5 hours. And then the competitive answer is 5 to 6 times a week with a total of 16 to 25 hours. So if there's time constraints, doing the traveling league is probably not going to work out for logistical purposes. So you got to think about this stuff when setting up your child's schedule. How many other activities does the child have? Seasonal variations may have multiple activities. Competitive answer is one dominant activity may have a second that is usually complementary in some way. So again, you got to be mindful of how to set up your child's schedule, and this is more for sports rather than for just regular generic training. Table 2, the win/lose side of competition. I think this is something that's important also. Psychological factor, and then there's a negative and a positive. Here's the psychological factor. Competitive stress. Negative would be anxiety disorder. Identifies self as winner or loser. No fun involved. So that's definitely a negative aspect. So we want to work for this positive aspect here, which is develops coping skills for a competitive world. So if your child strikes out, they should learn how to cope with that in a constructive manner. So these are building life skills here. Self-esteem. Failure is a consequence of their own action, feelings of incompetence. But the positive side would be achievement of realistic personal goals. Okay, I've struck out, but now I need to work on my swing. I'm going to go to the batting cage. And I got a home run. Okay, I achieved the goal. That's going to build some self-esteem. Motivation. Repeated failure leading to fear of failure and lack of risk-taking. Tremendous challenge that motivates excellence, internal gratification. So, if you fall down, you got to keep getting up. You know, this is just basic stuff here. Competitiveness. Be rationally competitive. Win at all cost. Positive mindset would be cooperative and competitiveness mixed together. Yeah, it's not all or nothing. That's a really bad mindset that a lot of that you see all too often, which is really unfortunate. So, moral development. Poor sportsmanship, cheating, violence, intimidation. Positive would be positive role models. Rule organization used appropriately. So you're going to learn some ethics working with a team or even in an individual sport. Attitudes. Criticism, exercise, punishment. And then the positive would be healthy bodies, healthy lifestyle. So it shouldn't be a punishment. This should be, we're going to use Pavlovian conditioning. We're going to reward exercise. We're not going to use it as punishment because we're trying to promote a healthy lifestyle. So we want to reward these kids for engaging in a healthy lifestyle. Responsibility. External control, no independence, and the healthy one would be strategy and decision-making skills. So allow your child to spread their wings and make some of their own choices. This early training, I mean, it has an impact, but you know, they have the whole rest of their lives to succeed. You know, one strikeout is not going to really matter in the big picture of things. Safe, strength, resistance, and weight training. Okay, so we went over everything else. Now let's get into to actually training some. Strength training is a general term that pertains to submaximal resistance exercise, weightlifting of increasing values, and powerlifting of excessive weight. The wording here is somewhat tricky, but just means that they're going to use higher rep schemes, which is definitely the way to do it. In this article, submaximal lifts of resistance in children in early adolescence are defined as increasing from TheraBand to body resistance to external weight. So, a TheraBand is just a rubber band, and body resistance is just body weight exercises. External weight would be barbells, dumbbells, or anything else. Submaximal is defined as below the available boundary of energy expenditure. So, with that, the takeaway from that is when you're training your child, when they're first getting into it, just doing body weight and banded exercises is the way to go about. Even in adults, that's the way to go about it. You call that GPP, General Physical Preparedness. There's tons of other jargony ways to talk about that too, but it's important to build that foundation before a child starts to want to use a weight. Parents and physicians have traditionally been concerned about growth plate fracture and risk of growth arrest. The literature suggested that epiphyseal fractures occurred more often in pubescent and postpubescence than in prepubescence. So this big long word here, epiphyseal, that just means growth plate. And that they actually happen more during and after puberty than before puberty. Michele, in his 1986 study, indicated that prepubescent growth plates may be less prone to fracture because they may be stronger and more resistant to shear stress than growth plates in the later stages of development where the hormone activity level is higher. Yeah, I mean, people who take anabolic steroids, there's a lot of side effects. One of them would be that their muscles develop at a faster rate than their tendons, ligaments. and their bones. So it's the same reasoning here. The children, the prepubescent children, don't have those hormones that are going to allow them to perform at higher levels of intensity that are going to make them more susceptible to injuring themselves, specifically those growth plates. The majority of injuries appear to be preventable when conditioning techniques, equipment, and rate of exercise progression are supervised. Movements such as improper lifting techniques, excessive loading, rapid progression of weight, and ballistic movements all result in greater shear forces at the joint. In prospective resistance training studies where close supervision is integrated into children, the incidence of injury drops significantly to relatively rare category. So when it comes to training, supervision and teaching the proper technique are of the utmost importance. Furthermore, follow-up studies of growth plate fractures appear to have no detrimental effect on growth when diagnosed early and properly treated. So even if there is a growth plate fracture, as long as the child is going to a physician, they're going to recover pretty quickly. Strength training programs should be tailored to the child's growth and development. Guidelines from Committee on Sports Medicine and Pediatrics stated that children are encouraged to strength train using submaximal weights but should avoid any practice of weightlifting, powerlifting, and bodybuilding until they have reached a level of Tanner Stage 5 in developmental maturity. What does this Tanner Stage 5 mean? It means that somebody has become fully mature. They've gone through puberty. I would click on this tab and show you the PDF on it, but I will spare you the imagery that they use to categorize these different stages. But I'll provide the link. You're welcome to do research on your own, and I will provide links to everything that I've talked about or have cited in this video in the description. Strength and weight training prescription. Guidelines for safe strength training include the components of frequency, how many times per week, intensity, number of exercises and repetitions, type, method of resistance and scope of exercise, and time, length of session and progression. Table 3, which is below here, this is often referred to as the FIT formula. Some of the key differences between adults and children include lower numbers of repetitions, submaximal weights, exercising through the full range of motion, and only doing a resistance program 2 to 3 times per week. So let's go over this here. So we have this frequency column, intensity column, a type column, and a time column. Here's this, we'll go through columns this way. Frequency, 2 to 3 times per week. And then at least one rest day between workouts. So 2 to 3 times a week, at least one day off in between. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Friday. However works best for you and your child's schedule. Intensity. And I'm not recommending to do this upper body and lower body on different days. We're talking about full body training, so let's do these both at the same time. So upper body, choose 4 to 5 muscle groups and use 8 to 12 repetitions of each group in 1 to 3 sets. Maybe you don't have to use 4 to 5 muscle groups or exercises if you're using compound movements, which require more technique. Learning the technique is probably of greater importance right now. We're at this stage. Lower body, choose 4 to 6 muscle groups. Use 9 to 15 repetitions of each group in 1 to 3 sets. The reps and sets seem about right. Again, this doesn't mean 4 to 6 exercises. You can keep the exercises, relatively low if you're using compound exercises. And when I mean compound, I'm meaning there's movement at more than one joint. So compound exercise would be a push-up, I guess, could be considered a compound exercise because you're involving the shoulder and the elbow joint, also the wrist joint too, opposed to a curl where there's really only movement at the elbow joint. Okay, here's this type column, submaximal resistance. So you're working pretty close to volitional fatigue to fatigue, and you're doing a higher rep count, 8 to 12 or 9 to 15. That seems to be a pretty safe bet. Integrate with conditioning and flexibility / cardiovascular strength. So flexibility and cardio are going to be just as important in training too. Why I've been talking about strength training, because there's so many misconceptions and propaganda against strength training in youth. That's why I'm going to depth here, but that doesn't mean we can ignore the flexibility or cardiovascular training either. Time. Start with no weight. Yeah, that's definitely the way to go about it. Start with no weight, learn the technique first, and then add little by little, poco a poco. Add weight gradually to an initial maximum of 6 repetitions. Add 1 to 2 repetitions per training session to a maximum of 12 to 15 repetitions. Use full range of motion. I cannot stress that enough. That means when you do squats, go all the way down. That is a full squat. This will pay dividends down the road, believe me. It took me far too long to learn that even as an adult. Increase weight by 1/2 to 1 kilogram, which is roughly 1 to 3 pounds. Side note, if you need to convert kilograms to pounds, it's not very hard. Just remember 2.2 increments every 3rd training session. So once a week you're gonna increase by this 1 to 3 pounds. No maximum lifts. I agree with this 100%. That means no 1RMs, no testing your max. You never get stronger from testing your max, so it's not really, it doesn't make sense. And for a child, we're not going to do that. It's too taxing on the central nervous system too, which is going to lead to burnout. Each session should be 20 to 30 minutes. Yeah, I think that's appropriate. Maybe they could go a little bit longer, but they don't need to be training up to an hour. They could, but not necessary. The first step to defining a program is to choose the muscle groups that require training. This should be determined by the sport involved, and the exercises should be for sport-specific training or development of weak areas to create improved muscle balance. Generally, the lower body has a few more muscle groups to exercise than within each muscle group. Determine the maximum capacity and set the actual weight below that. Maximum capacity can be determined by increasing weight until the participant feels muscle fatigue, shakiness, or reduced ability to complete range. The strength training program should always be integrated into a full fitness regimen that includes aerobic exercise and flexibility stretching. Supervision is recommended, especially in the first 12 to 18 months of training. This monitoring provides correction of technique, approval for weight progressions, integration into the whole program, and position advice. So this is the really important stuff right here. If your child's training, you need to be supervising them at least for a year to a year and a half until they get things down. This is probably one of the most important things here. Approval for weight progressions. The progression of how you advance in the weights you choose is something, it's an art for sure, and a lot of adults struggle with this. So getting good advice on that is really tough, and there's multiple different strategies out there, so some of it's up for debate, but you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's a pretty tried and true method to, you know, kind of undulating your reps and the weight. I can make a video on that too. Just let me know if you want me to talk about that. Integration into the whole program and position advice. So yeah, that's just basic technique using the full range of motion. Treating the child athlete. When a child athlete attends your office for evaluation, there are many influencing factors that affect the compliance and adherence to recommended treatment strategies. The athlete is receiving information from multiple sources, including the coach, parents, and teammates. Often a note to the coach or a call from a teacher are common occurrences. Information and influences are abundant from parents, television, internet, and sports sector of society. This can be supportive or it may be confusing. So there's a lot of propaganda on strength training for youth population, and you know, there's definitely instances where it has been done very inappropriately, but as we can see, there's a lot of benefits, and just because some people spit fear tactics out there doesn't mean that your child shouldn't train, because that would be a detriment to their upbringing. Understanding the dynamics in a child's life and the team that they bring with them is often the key to successful communication and implementation of treatment. The child's safety and health should be the foremost consideration of the physician, and this perspective needs to be presented clearly in a sensitive manner to the child and parents. So let's not just focus on winning at all costs. Let's think about the long term of your child's health, you know. So this is just a simple diagram right here. We have the athlete, the child. You're going to be involved with your parents, obviously, teammates, coaches, school, and society at large. All of them are going to have influence on them. So it's important that we recognize those variables and that our perspective doesn't become skewed because of different influences, while maintaining an objective perspective, what is best for the child, and that means recognizing our own biases also. So it's important to keep an open mind, but not to be persuaded by sophisms of people with their own agenda or who are just misinformed. Exercise prescription for children with special needs. Children with an illness or disability should be encouraged to exercise on a regular schedule and with supervision initially. The fitness program components do not change, but the intensity, progression, and choice of equipment may need to be modified. Good exercise programs are available for children with asthma, obesity, and developmental special needs. Encouraging family exercise programs assists in the normal socialization process. Equipment may need to be modified. blah blah blah. Supervision in exercise progression occurs in walking and swimming programs for asthmatics. Balance can be challenged by horseback riding programs in sports such as bowling and curling. So if your child has a condition, granted it's not a heart condition, that's no excuse for them not to train. Obviously it needs to be addressed in designing a training program, but it's not an excuse not to train. It might be an even greater reason to train. Teddy Roosevelt, he had asthma, and he took it upon himself to train rigorously and be an outdoorsman, and he said that was a turning point in his life. So this is important stuff. Conclusions. Our youngsters are slowly but surely heading in two directions. Those who do exercise and do so with intensity, and those who do not exercise and progressively decrease their daily activity levels. Each group requires advice and counseling, while parents, children, and coaches look to the medical profession for guidance and credibility. The once taboo subject of weight training in children has been researched and shows that safe exercise can be prescribed. The key to success lies in exercise technique, proper progression, and safe equipment. Supervision is a vital component. Training can serve to improve performance in many daily activities such as socialization, school performance, and sport. Children with illness and disability are encouraged to participate in individual exercise and team sport to develop strength and reduce injury. And here's all of the references. This will be in the link. Okay, so there's another article. This one's much shorter, but it's gonna recap what we went over, and we'll kind of skim some here. Strength training in children and adolescents, raising the bar for young athletes. Okay, strength training in children in combination with plyometric, that means jump training, and/or agility training has become an increasingly popular tactic for athletes to gain a competitive edge during the off-season. The present review clarifies some common myths associated with strength training in children, and it outlines the most current recommendations. Evidence acquisition. Okay. Results. Children can improve strength by 30 to 50% after just 8 to 12 weeks of well-designed strength training program. 30 to 50%, I mean, that is just astounding. Youth need to continue to train at least 2 times per week to maintain strength. The case reports of injuries related to strength training include epiphyseal plate fractures, such as growth plates, and low back injuries are primarily attributed to the misuse of equipment, inappropriate weight, improper technique, or lack of qualified adult supervision. Conclusion. Youth athletes and non-athletes alike can successfully and safely improve their strength and overall health by participating in a well-supervised program. Trained fitness professionals play an essential role in ensuring proper technique, form, progression of exercise, and safety in this age group. Competitive athletes and non-athletes alike may be interested in strength training for various reasons, including their athletic prowess and physique. Interested in off-season conditioning, parents and pre-adolescent athletes often turn their attention to strength training. These programs can benefit many children and pre-adolescents by improving not only their strength but also their bone density, balance, lipid profiles, fat-free mass, and personal self-esteem. Recent studies have focused on the benefits of strength training for children with cerebral palsy, thereby demonstrating improved daily function and self-esteem. Exercise and sports are an important part of childhood. The lessons learned from team and individual sports are applicable throughout life. Children who establish regular exercise habits will ideally continue them into adulthood. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the American Academy of Pediatrics recommended that all school-aged children participate in at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous developmental appropriate physical activity each day. The primary concerns regarding strength training are safety and its effectiveness. Healthcare and fitness professional groups, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Sports Medicine, ACSM, the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine, and the National Strength and Conditioning Association agree that a supervised strength training program that follows the recommended guidelines and precautions is safe and effective for children. This review study sought to evaluate applicable articles and consensus statements regarding strength training in young athletes. Search results included studies indexed in the PubMed and Medline from 1980 through 2008. Okay, we're gonna scroll down some here. A child's physical, cognitive, and social maturity are key factors in determining the age at which a child is ready to participate in a strength training program. There's no minimal age requirement for participation. Although children must be able to follow directions and demonstrate adequate balance and proprioception, that just means bodily awareness, which generally occurs by 7 or 8 years of age. Before starting a program, children should have a pre-participation physical exam by a qualified medical professional. The screening exam is necessary because some children should not participate due to medical reasons. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that children and adolescents with cardiomyopathy, especially hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, should not strength train. They are at risk for worsening ventricular hypertrophy and restrictive cardiomyopathy and hemodynamic decompensation due to acute increases in pulmonary hypertension with resistance training. Children with isolated pulmonary hypertension should not participate in these programs either. Those with stage 2 hypertension or end organ damage from hypertension require medical clearance before participation owing to the risk for increased elevation of blood pressure while training. Chemotherapy with this one's tough for me. Anthracylines, which are cardiotoxic, may also preclude strength training. Doxorubicin, danomycin, daunorubicin, idarubicin, and possibly mitoxantrone have been linked to acute congestive heart failure. Marfan syndrome patients with a dilated aortic root should not participate, whereas those children with seizure disorders need to demonstrate good seizure control before participation in these programs. So you need to get a physical. If there's a heart condition or seizure, some other conditions, that's definitely a cause for concern, and it's important to recognize that stuff early. Guidelines for strength training. Before a child starts a training program, the training supervisor, the child, and the parent should discuss the goals and expectations. The dangers of anabolic steroids and other performance-enhancing substances should be part of that discussion. This is something that is not talked about enough. There's a lot of pressure in our culture, a lot of body image issues out there that steroid use should be talked about, and it's something that there needs to be a dialogue about. Current studies report that the rate of anabolic steroid use in adolescents range ranges from 1.5 to 7.6%. That's pretty dang high. You should be counseled about the risk and health consequences of steroid use and be strongly discouraged from using such substances. Emphasis added. Weight training programs should be individualized on the basis of age, maturity, and personal goals and objectives. Each training session should include a 5 to 10 minute warm-up and a 5 to 10 minute cool-down. Warm-up activities help to increase body temperature and blood flow, an example to the musculature, whereas cool-down activities help to maintain blood flow to enhance recovery and flexibility. Programs that incorporate an aerobic component are most beneficial because they improve overall cardiovascular fitness and stimulate an increase in metabolism. When a child or adolescent is learning a new exercise, he or she can use no-load repetitions, just body weight, or just a bar, which places the focus on form and technique. To properly develop strength and promote flexibility, exercises should be performed through the full range of joint motion, performing larger muscle exercises for smaller exercises. This is just 101 stuff here. Furthermore, complex exercises are generally done before more simple exercises. We talked about compound exercises or multi-joint exercises before single joint ones. In summary, starting big and ending small is a good guideline for training. Again, emphasis added. In general, children and adolescents should use submaximal loads to develop form and technique in a variety of exercises. The American Academy of Pediatrics does not endorse using continuous maximal lifts for youth strength training. Single maximal lifts are not recommended until skeletal maturity is attained, even though studies of single repetition tests that reported no injuries in healthy children with proper supervision on child-sized weight training machines. So, maxing out doing 1RM training, just don't do it. It doesn't really make sense. Youth strength training programs should ideally incorporate a variety of resistance types, free weights, weight machines, rubber tubing, and medicine balls. Free weight and weight machines pose unique challenges for children and adolescents because they're usually adult-sized. Balance and coordination are undeveloped in pre-adolescence, which increases their susceptibility to injury while using free weights. Free weights do, however, enable incremental increases in resistance, 5 to 10%. So, free weights is going to be the best option always, but it's something that people need to work up to, but it doesn't really take that long. Weight machines often require larger weight increases, 5 to or 10 pound weight plates, which may be inappropriate for young athletes. You can't microload. You couldn't get like a washer that weighs a third of a pound that you can put on, or even smaller. In addition, the lever arms on weight machines may not be sized correctly for small children. The primary advantage of weight machines, if they are sized appropriately, is that they may not require balance or spotter. The young athlete should fit the equipment properly and be taught the skills and technique to perform each exercise correctly. For each training session, 6 to 8 exercises are recommended that train the major muscle groups. Balanced effort between flexors and extensors between upper and lower bodies is important. Okay, so again, this is talking about injury prevention and those local stabilization exercises, the yoga exercises. So that's really important. I would love to make a video about that. So send me a message if you want to see something like that. The goal is to perform 2 to 3 exercises per muscle group. Your strength training program should start with 1 to 2 sets per exercise with 6 to 15 repetitions on each set. For children and adolescents, the initial load should be selected so that 10 to 15 repetitions can be completed with some fatigue but no muscle failure. So you're not going to failure. Again, that never makes sense, or negative training either for that matter. In general, resistance can be increased by 5 to 10% when the child can easily perform 15 repetitions. So again, this progression, this is very important. If the participant fails to complete at least 10 repetitions per set or is unable to maintain a proper form, then the weight is probably too heavy and should thus be reduced. Participants should rest approximately 1 to 3 minutes between sets and should strength train 2 to 3 non-consecutive days each week for maximal results. I think that the downtime between sets, especially in exercises like squats, it could be a little bit longer. I would say no longer than 5 minutes, but up to 5 minutes. Their children's metabolisms are different than adults, but for an adult, it's up to 5 minutes to get a full recharge on your ATP, your adenosine triphosphate. So it could be up to 5, but I would reason that a child's recovery time for a reload on their ATP probably going to be less than 5 minutes. Something I have to do more research on, but I don't think there's anything wrong with going up to 5 minutes so long as the rest is not any longer than that. Stopping a strength training program even while continuing to participate in sports may result in a regression of strength to pre-training levels. An average of 3% of strength is lost per week once strength training is stopped and detraining begins, and children may even show a complete loss of strength gains 8 weeks after stopping and strength training regimen. So atrophy is going to occur. So we're teaching lifestyle choices here. So this is something that you're going to do for a life, and it shouldn't be a drag, and it should be fun. Strength training myths. Numerous myths concerning strength training, and children deserve discussion. One misunderstanding concerns strength training growth plate injuries. Participation in almost any type of sport or recreational activity carries a risk of injury. A well-supervised strength training program has no greater inherent risk than that of any other youth sport or activity. So strength training is no more dangerous than soccer or t-ball or anything else for that matter. I've actually come across a lot of data that suggests that strength training is one of the safest activities a child can do for physical activity, granted that there is proper supervision, of course. Initial concerns about youth strength training safety stem from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission's National Electronic Surveillance System. The data from 2006 included close to 23,000 injuries attributed to weightlifting or weight equipment for persons 8 to 19 years old. The context in which these injuries occurred. An example of supervision technique equipment use was not recorded, which makes the data difficult to interpret. A well-designed strength training program following the recommended load sets and repetitions appropriate for the young athlete's age and body habitus should not excessively stress growth plates. Yeah, so 1RM training with high, with a lot of sets, working with low repetitions, this just doesn't make sense. Sports such as gymnastics and baseball, which involve repetitive impact and torque, provide a greater risk of epiphyseal injury. That's the growth plates again. Yeah, so I just don't get it. I'm no gymnastics coach, but gymnastics seems to have way more injuries than any sort of strength training. Gymnastics, young gymnasts are always doing strength training all the time, and nobody's really up in arms about that. So there's other ways that a child can train, or even young gymnasts that can train, that it's going to be a benefit to them if we can just get past some of these myths about training people in these populations. The rare case report of epiphyseal plate fractures related to strength training were attributed to misusing equipment, lifting inappropriate amounts of weight, using improper technique, or training without qualified adult supervision. These factors emphasize the need for trained fitness professionals to teach correct form and monitor a logical progression of weight. Okay, so by now I've probably become very redundant, if you're still listening to me even. So I'm gonna scroll down here at the bottom here. Olympic style lifting. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommended that children and adolescents avoid competitive Olympic style weightlifting and proper lifting until they reach physical and skeletal maturity. Despite the recommendation, some skeletally immature athletes do compete in Olympic style lifting. To ensure their safety, such athletes should follow proper progression as well as the guidance of a skilled coach. The snatch and clean and jerk are complex movements that require skilled coaching and supervision. Such lifts should never be attempted without proper training and supervision. Summary: strength training, when performed in a controlled, supervised environment, can help children and adolescents of all athletic abilities safely improve their strength and overall health and well-being. The health benefits of strength training far outweigh the potential risk, especially in today's society where childhood obesity continues to rise. So, if you've stayed with me this long, that means that you care about your child and their well-being, and I thank you for listening to me. We didn't really talk about actual program design because I thought it was really important to just talk about these myths and kind of just the overall strategy to go about it. I'm gonna show some just brief examples of training here. I think that just kettlebell training after doing calisthenic training or body weight training is really the way to go, and then later on maybe think about doing some barbell training. And this early on stuff is really just about technique. We talked about T-ball. So like, some people might be outraged by this here. They think that they're gonna be teaching this kid how to start lifting and working to fatigue right here. But this is just a toy. This is not for progressive overload. This product here is just for a child to use in like a family training setting, and it would be to just improve the proprioception, the bodily awareness, to lay the foundations for, you know, training down the road. So this isn't gonna cause hypertrophy. It's not gonna do any damage. It's just kids having fun and learning the foundations of a healthy lifestyle. So please think about this stuff and send me a message if you would like to learn more about this, and I would be more than happy to make some more intuitive and simpler videos that just go over the techniques, and I would be sure to listen to all of your feedback. Thanks.
She goes, your mom made limoncello and like I got tipsy and I started blurting out stuff. I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? She's like, and then she told me the whole story, like a story that could have been like 5 minutes long ended up